So after the critical and financial failure of The Thing, John Carpenter went on to do a little movie called Christine, a Stephen King adaptation, and then followed that up with a sci-fi romance called Starman. So how exactly does one of the greatest horror directors of all time do with a romance? What is up, guys, and welcome back to the John Carpenter review series, and from here on out we should be going along at a nice little clip until we finish. Sorry we had a little hiatus there in the later months of last year, which is a busy season, but now we are back with Starman, a movie that is actually a first-time watch for me, and a movie that I was really looking forward to. This is one of Brian Lomax's favorite films by John Carpenter. It seems to be one of the more underrated movies across the board from most people that I've seen with Carpenter discussions or rankings. It's always pretty high up there, and so I was looking forward to seeing kind of the softer side of John Carpenter and seeing what he could do outside of having a masked killer or a shape-shifting alien or a maniacal car. And essentially what this movie is about is that you have, back in the 70s, we sent out like a space shuttle with this beacon or with this radio broadcast with this weird attempt to try to contact whoever might be out there. And this film is following up that real-life event with a possibly fictional, we don't know, story where an alien being actually comes to Earth, that actually responds to that radio broadcast, that beacon, and crash lands on Earth. It realizes that Earth is hostile, not ready for any alien contact, and takes the form of Jeff Bridges, which is the recently deceased husband of Karen Allen, and then forces her to take him across to Arizona where he can kind of reconvene with his mothership and get the fuck out of Earth. That's the basic setup of this movie. And I gotta be honest with you, I watched this movie twice to review it. The first time I thought maybe I was a little bit tired, or, maybe I wasn't in the mood for it, so I watched it again last night before I clicked the record button, and I'm extremely disappointed with Starman. I'm extremely disappointed that this wasn't one of those underrated classics that I was finally discovering. For as many people that seem to really love this movie, I don't quite get it. But really quick before we dive into the good, bad, and ugly of Starman, if you yourself are planning on going over to an alien planet for a week and hanging out, you might want to have a banking app that you can trust and the ability to get some extra cash on hand by using the sponsor of today's video, Dave. Every single one of us has had the occasional financial issues or unexpected expenses come out of absolutely nowhere, and especially as a homeowner that has 3 kids, there have been plenty of times where I feel like I'm finally getting ahead, I'm finally out of the red, I'm finally starting to build that savings account, and then something in the house breaks, or one of the kids have an injury, or something needs to be bought for school, the truck needs a new part. You know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. Well, everyday situations like these is where Dave can help. Dave is a banking app that could help you get up to $500 instantly with its extra cash feature. And with Dave, there's no interest, late fees, or credit check. So with the Dave app, you can fill up your gas tank or buy that last-minute birthday gift that you forgot about without having to wait for your next paycheck. Download Dave today at dave.com/Cody. That's dave.com/Cody. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. And thank you to Dave for sponsoring today's video. But starting off with the positives of Starman, I do think that there is a really good chemistry between Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen. Those are both actors that I really like. Of course, Jeff Bridges has gone on to do multitudes of awesome things. I was always a big fan of Karen Allen. Always wondered why I didn't see her in more movies. Pretty much only knew her from Raiders of the Lost Ark and Scrooged, and now this one. And so as 2 actors that are the leads of what becomes a romance film by the at least midpoint of the film through to the end, I think that that is one of the more crucial elements to a romance, is that you gotta have good chemistry between your leads. Otherwise, you don't buy the romance, you don't buy the love, you don't buy the motivations of anything going on. And so despite a bit of discomfort that I had regarding their relationship, I think that what the movie demanded out of the 2 actors, they got really good performances out of them and got really good chemistry out of them.
Kiss me. And tell me you love me.
I love you.
There's also some pretty good special effects here, especially for the time. The main one, the best one to me, which looked mostly practical, is in like the first 5 minutes of the film, to where the little alien light orb starts to take the form of a human, and as Karen Allen watches, he goes from a baby to a child to a teenager to a man, and it's one of those like werewolf transformation looking scenes, to where it's just skin stretching and things growing, and I thought it was pretty effective. Then you get into the later part of the film, there is a lot more digital and optical effects, the way that the actual mothership looks, which is basically just like a big reflective circle, was kind of a neat effect. There was even a pretty iconic shot, because it's in a lot of the posters, where Jeff Bridges is holding Karen Allen's body walking out of a fire like the Terminator, and he has kind of like this glow around him that it worked for an 80s film. I thought it looked pretty interesting, and it has kind of that lighthearted tone that some of this movie is going for. So John Carpenter, always been really good with the effects in his movies. This is no different. And finally, at the heart of the story, especially regarding the climax of the movie, it really has this strong message about, closure and being able to let go of grief. And I think the movie was effective at that side of the storyline, at that theme, if nothing else. I think that as the movie goes on and you start to see Karen Allen's character kind of warm up to this alien and start to see bits of him that do remind her of her husband, who he has taken the form of, and she kind of rekindles a little bit of that love and magic that she had that was cut short with her husband, and gets a little bit of a band-aid to be able to put onto her grief and be able to finally let go by the end of it. That worked. That actually got to me. That felt like a really effective part of the story and the performances of the two characters. Now moving on to the mixed, and most of this review is probably going to be in the mixed category. The first one is Jeff Bridges' performance, which I seem to be on the minority of, to not really like what he was doing, I guess. I mean, he got nominated for an Oscar for this, so I'm really in the minority, apparently. He's going for this bird-like quality. Like, if an alien took over a human body, would he know how to drive the vehicle? Something like that, which is interesting. I wouldn't go as far to say it's method, but it's something to take that character a little bit further than maybe it asks for on the page for the script. But he has like this bird-like quality where he's always kind of like twitching, and the way that he talks always has like a extra little facial movement, and it was really distracting for me at first. I kind of got used to it, but I never really endeared to it. Like, it was never really something that passed the point of being awkward into being charming. I always just thought it was kind of awkward, to the point where it was hard for me to fully buy that Karen Allen would completely warm up to this character, because of how weird he is, and because of how just nuts his facial expressions and his mannerisms and his dialect and everything is. It seems like that would be a big wall for anybody, let alone somebody that's looking at an alien taking the shape of her dead husband, to get past. And so I understand what he was going for. I understand the appeal of that. It is unique, and it does show the acting ability of Jeff Bridges earlier on in his career, but it wasn't a performance that I particularly latched into and enjoyed.
Hey! Bingo.
It really didn't do this movie any favors that it was coming out around the same time as E.T., and it certainly didn't do me any favors that I watched it 40 years after that and have seen other movies go for this setup. But, the crash-landed friendly alien that means humanity no harm, that all of humanity is suddenly trying to do harm to, and he's trying to escape back to the mothership and get off this planet, and kind of reflecting on humanity about how untrusting and how vicious we are. That's something I've seen done a dozen times. And so that's kind of the heart of the movie, aside from the romance, is just that's the main character arc, the main drive for the story for the Jeff Bridges character. And I just didn't feel it was taken in any direction that made it feel different or better or rising above other versions of this story that I have seen, especially E.T. And so I understand completely why, in doing research, they were really nervous about releasing this film, because of the obvious comparisons it was going to get to what at the time was the highest grossing film of all time. I also felt that the movie was tonally all over the place. Like, you had the sci-fi element, you had not really a lot of horror, but you had some disturbing stuff in here, like that practical effect I was talking about in the opening of the film. That is right out of a horror film. Like, I likened it to the werewolf movies. It looks like something that should be in a werewolf film. You even have like a gunshot wound that happens to Karen Allen about halfway through the film that's actually pretty graphic for a PG film. And so you have those tones, you have like physical awkward comedy that's sprinkled out here and there. And it never really felt like the movie picked a tone or picked a direction. It was just kind of doing whatever along the way. There was times where it was really intriguing and thought-provoking. There was times where it was kind of horrific and kind of uncomfortable. There was times where it was sweet and romantic. There was other times where it was really goofy and comedic, like whenever Jeff Bridges' character goes to kiss the government agent at the end because he just saw Karen Allen do it. And thank you. And so where some movies can kind of blend together a whole bunch of tones and a bunch of different directions and genres and subgenres, I felt like Starman really struggled to bring all that together into a cohesive movie. It just kind of felt all over the place.
I watched you very carefully. Red light, stop. Green light, go. Yellow light, go. Very fast.
And now moving on to the negatives. I did not buy for one single solitary second the way that Karen Allen reacts to Jeff Bridges' character. Now, I think their performances are good and I think their chemistry is good, as I've said, but just the logic part of my brain was battling me the entire time, where you have this grieving widow that goes out into her living room and finds this alien being morphing into a human man that ends up looking identical to her dead husband, who then forces her by gunpoint into a car and makes her drive across the country for quite a bit into the movie for unknown reasons. I don't buy for a second that she would not flip the fuck out and be terrified and be freaking the hell out the entire first act, if nothing else, of this film. She was so casually going along with it and warmed up to him so easily. I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it for 1 second. The whole time, the movie is trying to get me to invest in this budding romance and her changing views of him and her warming up to him and his understanding of human connection and love, kind of like Terminator 2. And I just never did. I never bought into what they were trying to sell me. It always just seemed like such a stretch. And going along with that, while I appreciated so much the notes that the movie ended on as far as getting over her grief and being able to let go and say goodbye to her husband with this interaction with this alien that looks just like her husband, there was a moment where they tried to make the catalyst of her finally giving in and loving this alien like she loved her husband and letting go. They make the catalyst of that her being impregnated by this alien. And I know that was meant to be a really sweet, touching moment, because she gives the context in a previous conversation that they tried to have children and she was not able to have children, and so that's a part of her husband that she will never have. And then he gives her what she was never able to have with her husband, which is a pregnancy. And on paper, that works. On paper, there's something sweet and something very romantic about that. The execution of it, however, creeped me the fuck out. Like I already said, Jeff Bridges' performance was always kind of weird and awkward to me, where it was just hard for me to believe that she would endear herself to him as it is. But very quickly, they like move into this romance side of the story and they fuck on this train, and even the sex scene itself and the music choice was kind of awkward, and the way that they were kissing, it just looked like two teenagers that don't know how to kiss and they're trying to be all sexy with each other. Nonetheless, immediately after that, he starts to tell her like, "Oh, I must tell you something. I gave you a baby last night." And she's like, "What are you talking about? I can't have kids. I told you that." And he's like, "You must trust me. I gave you a baby. It is your husband's baby, but it is also my baby. And it will grow up and know everything about everything in the universe. And so it's mostly going to be an alien in a human shell." That last part I kind of added in. I filled in the blanks of what he was trying to say, but that entire exchange was so awkward to me.
There is something I must tell you. I gave you a baby tonight. A boy baby. He will be human, the baby of your husband, but also he will be my baby.
It just felt so almost borderline like violating, and that's very odd of a tone to do in a romance. I know what they were going for. I know the sweet angle they were going for, and the fact that she hugs him and embraces him is like the clinch pin on that, is that he gave her something that she was never able to have, and that is like the final thing that she needed to be able to move on and to be able to let go of her husband, because now she has this new piece of her husband growing inside of her that eventually she'll raise. Oh, I get all of that. But the way that it read in the scene was just like an alien put an alien inside of you, and now you are going to give birth to a half alien, half human. And that...
Well, now that is some fucked up shit.
So all in all, guys, it sucks because I was really looking forward to this one. I was excited to finally see this movie that so many people seem to really enjoy, but for a multitude of reasons, it just really did not work for me. I felt it was very awkwardly handled, and it's not a movie I can see myself rewatching anytime soon or again, period. I wish I could see the movie that some of you did, but I just didn't. This one was just not for me. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Please check out Dave down in the video description below. Also, if you enjoyed this, click the playlist over here for the rest of my John Carpenter reviews, and I'm also going to put my playlist of all of my reviews of last year's new releases. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of this John Carpenter review series. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.